Hi, I'm NB Roberts. I'm going to be reading a little from my novel Halton Cray. This story takes place at a reputedly haunted Tudor mansion in southeast England, which is open to the public. Alexandra is the main character of the novel, and she goes to work at this Tudor mansion where she meets some very different characters. One in particular is Tom, the curator, who also resides at Halton Cray. And he is a very mysterious man, quite teasing, especially since he's found something quite strange about Alex, that he wants to get to know a little bit more about her. He's quite bewildered by her, and she in turn just finds him a bit weird really, and wants to be left alone. I'm going to be reading chapter 8, which is called Peter Pan's Shadow. Some nights later, a storm woke me in the early hours. Thunder growled outside in beats and claps, while rain pelted my bedroom windows. I wouldn't be able to sleep through it, nor did I want to miss a good storm. I got up and went to the window, opening it a fraction. The smell of the sodden air awakened me. I grabbed my book, Frankenstein of all things, and sat there to read. Lightning struck under the clouds in various quarters of the bruised sky, illumining every raindrop as they fell long and vertical like millions of needles. I soon found myself imagining what it was like at the Halton Cray, with this beast of a storm raging through the deserted gardens. The river would be running wild and black. I could almost hear the footsteps of the ghost lady in the empty turret. Every chimney would let the wildness of it in. How strange it must be to live there. Perhaps it suited Tom, or Tom suited it. Once back in bed, I dreamt of Stacey trapped in the Cray. Terrified, she screamed blue murder before suddenly becoming me, and the sound of my own screams woke me in the form of my alarm clock. The day was very fresh, as is usual after a storm. That afternoon, I found Mrs. Evans had me down for working on the front desk. The Cray was quiet. I could hear the hum of the central heating struggling to keep the place warm. Since Mrs. Evans regularly had the radio on here, I ran the risk of listening to my MP3 player with just one headphone in. I was miming lyrics to a favourite song while drawing in my sketch pad. I didn't see him standing in front of me. I started. Tom slowly folded his arms across the desk and leant a little over it as if to snoop around. Instead, his black eyes just burrowed into mine. They do say that the first sign of madness is talking to oneself, was his opening line. I was miming song lyrics. I pointed to my plugged ear. Always on the defensive. What more proof do I need, since they say that the second sign is denial, he added with relish. If I weren't insane already, I soon would be from all the lambasting I got on the subject from this character. I wanted to look away and adopt aloofness, but the competitor in me met his gaze with a childish determination to win, viz., to make him blink first. I failed. He stood there in a deep blue shirt. His eyes, solidly fixed, seemed to go on forever as a starless night sky. "Has anything arrived for me today?" he asked, changing the subject and releasing me from another staring competition. "Mrs. Evans deals with the post on weekdays. I've only just started my shift. She's in the shop if you want to ask her." I went on sketching. He went on watching. "What are you scribbling at there?" Reluctantly, I showed him. It was just a pencil sketch of a horse set against a run of mountains. He surprised me by taking it from my hand and examining it up close. He mused. "Is this really yours?" "No, I stole it." He mused longer. "These obscure eyes in the mountains are vaguely familiar." "What eyes?" I frowned, looking over. He pointed out two almond-shaped details, which I could see resembled a penetrating stare framed by a rugged, mountainous brow. I didn't realise I'd drawn them. He read my face. "Ah, perhaps the voices in your head told you to conceal them." "You're just jealous," I replied, "because the voices don't talk to you." "Bastards," he smirked, returning my sketch pad. "You've talent, Alex, and passion, but you lack precision. Practice can easily correct that. Certainly the mane is too fine for horsehair. Where are you copying it from? He inspected my desk. From my head. Well, in that case, he ran his eye over me, uncharacteristically pausing for an epithet to call me. For a young woman, it is unique. Thank you, I think. How long was he going to stand there? I wanted to listen to my music. Are you sure there's nothing back there for me? I'm expecting something. The sooner I found the package he was after, or verified it wasn't here, the sooner he would move along before I was yet again pronounced a lunatic. I began searching the desk, round the scarce items on it, giving an involuntary sigh as I did so. There doesn't seem to be anything here. Well, don't torment yourself, he slammed in unexpectedly. It's probably still on its way. Probably, I affirmed. I unplugged my ear since he remained there, and I didn't want to be rude. There was just no denying the extent of how he got under my skin. I felt it like one of those itches that you can't locate, and so find yourself scratching everywhere in vain to alleviate it. You won't score any points with Mrs. E, he pointed to my headphones as I wound them up. I shrugged my shoulders confidently. It's your funeral, he stared darkly. What does that brazen smile mean? Nothing. I'll take my chances. I'm sure you will. If the package you're waiting for is urgent, I can go and ask Mrs. Evans myself. Or, never mind that, he leant back off the desk. How are you enjoying working here? I took a deep breath. I had to be careful of what I said. It's as good a place as any to work, I replied, but better than most to be. How's that? I'm very fond of this place. Really? His lips curled up at the sides. I shouldn't be surprised. The general lack of padded cells and straitjackets are no doubt comforting to you. Still, I would think you might find it a little too lifeless. Not in the least. You don't tire easily of the mindless chatter that goes on between those who've nothing better to do. I couldn't care less what they talk about. So in your opinion, what's worse, he went on? Someone talking badly of people, or someone prejudging those on what's being said? I thought I could empathise with him to some extent on the subject. Neither is worse, I said, because you shouldn't care what people think of you, nor what they say. It would in itself determine whether someone is worth knowing. My sentiments exactly, he beamed. I looked back to my desk. Some people here I might grow to like, and some I might not. As I said, I'm fond of this place. You don't find it eerie? I like eerie. I raised my head to meet his stare full on. What's wrong with eerie anyway? People are always complaining and getting goosebumps every time a door creaks. Anyone would think that the dead were wandering about before their eyes. He half smiled. Perhaps you're just untried. I wonder what you would do if the dead appeared before you. I'd probably complain about the smell, since dead things smell bad. Is that so? He laughed, showing his dimples. He turned to face the empty corridor, as if expecting somebody. I couldn't hear anybody approaching. Then I caught Daniel's voice speaking to someone as he turned into the hallway and eventually came into view. Speak of the devil, he hollered, referring to Tom, though addressing a brunette woman walking in very high heels at his side. The lofty shoes made her appear almost as tall as Tom. I believe you know this lady, Dan continued. Of course he does, she snapped. Silly monkey. Carla Louise, he said deliberately, smiling, would like to donate an antique banner to one of the period collections. Take a look at this. He excitedly unfolded a black flag emblazoned with a white flower, similar to a Tudor rose. The brunette smiled keenly at Tom with plump rouge lips and black coffee eyes, a natural beauty. Next to her, no one would mistake me for pretty. It's lovely to see you, Tom, she said, softening her voice and flicking her sleek dark hair over one shoulder. An exotic, rich fragrance drifted from her as she moved. Tom took a moment and then answered her. Not as lovely as it is to see you. Perhaps it was a special effort on his part, because Dan's face became a picture of shock, and her otherwise smooth complexion creased with sudden delight. Save for her footwear, she had annoyingly good dress sense, but a deal too much confidence. Perhaps she was in her late 20s. I've been keeping this aside for you, Tom, she added, stroking the flag, since I read your magnificent article a few months back in... I didn't quite catch the name of the magazine. "I appreciate the gesture," Tom returned genuinely. The phone rang on my desk. It was a booking for a school trip. Mrs. Evans insisted on dealing with these, so as instructed, I put all the details into the diary. The three of them, still chatting across from my desk, finally began to move along. As they did, Tom glanced my way, and in the next moment, Carla Louise followed his eyes. Perhaps it was merely because I had dropped my pen while scribbling down the information. On finding it under my desk, I came across a package addressed to the correct curator, Thomas Roos. I could no longer see him, and I wanted to run it round to his office now, while I knew he was busy. Typically, a number of other things suddenly needed doing, and it was gone 5 o'clock before I could leave the desk. I hoped to find his office empty and leave the package there. With his door closed, I didn't want to knock. Instead, I tried out Francis's technique, peeling back the corner of the sign that papered over the little window. I had to go up on tiptoes and crane my neck to see. He was in there and alone, sat at his desk with his back to me. He seemed to be writing something with his left hand. With his right, he was pivoting a metallic-looking ball, about the size of a small orange, around his hand and between the ends of his fingers in slow, rhythmic movements. He did this so sinuously and precisely, like the object defied gravity. I've seen jugglers do similar, and very skillfully too, but it was nothing compared to this. He paid no attention to it, with his head inclined towards the paper he was writing on. Surely he was ambidextrous, as well as incredibly gifted. It was quite hypnotic watching this orb dance around his wrist and flow upward across the back of his hand, seemingly of its own accord. I could see hardly any movement from him as it looped his fingers in constant, innovative patterns, a true Nijinsky of juggling, and one to rival Moshen, since he was doing it blind. I'd never been remotely interested in learning more about this enigma of a man, but this gave rise to curiosity. I noticed then the shadow of his hand cast by the ceiling lights. I felt like an idiot for having questioned his existence before. How ridiculous I'd been, as if he possessed a shadow like Peter Pan's that could detach itself for some mischievous adventure. I was glad I hadn't gotten so carried away with all this, aided by Stacey's silliness, to have gone looking for yet more evidence of him being a ghost, or worse, asked him about his missing shadow. However, the answer to one mystery now left another for solving. His shadow seemed to become involved in the dance. The ball left his hand, but did not drop to the desk. Between his hand and its shadow, the ball moved independently between them, as if suspended on invisible wires. It was certainly some sort of chicanery. I must have been under the spell of the ballet, because on wanting a closer look, I found I had a grip on the door handle, pushing it down slightly. Thanks very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed that. I just want to wish you all luck with your NaNoWriMo and say thank you very much for having me here today, and thank you so much to Laura as well for organising all of this and for inviting me along. I'm just going to leave you with an excerpt from my upcoming book, which is called The 13th Baronet, and this will be the sequel to Halton Cray. Nothing made me so cowardly than the idea, and certainly the very sight, of a shadow independent of its creator. Even when it belonged to Tom and did Tom's bidding, I had never liked the idea of it. I feared it mostly because I didn't understand it. Did it think? How could it think? How could its sightless eyes watch me, as I felt they did? How could it intend things, as I knew it could? Did it wait for me to be alone? Thank you.